Welcome everybody to the second episode of Meet the Mentors. It's a reseller interview show where I talk to some of the folks who have influenced me most on the platform, so the most successful resellers that I have access to. And today I'm super excited because I'm joined by a dynamic duo in the shoe resale niche. So please give a warm welcome to Ryan and Lindsay of RNZY. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. We're
Appreciate
excited.
it, man. We're excited to be on the channel.
I guess I should come clean a little bit and say I'm a little bit nervous for this interview. You guys are kind of like celebrities to me, so I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Well, we're nervous too.
Yeah.
It's always fun talking reselling adventure, but we love all the stuff that you're putting out there. And the reason I'm nervous is I couldn't decide one of the questions that you had sent us. I couldn't decide on the answer, so I've got two answers.
Okay. Well, we'll see how quickly we come on to that. The first one that I want to ask you guys is, I like to open up with a little bit of a curveball. Maybe this is the one that you were referring to.
Yeah.
Loosen it up a little bit. Is if you had to describe yourself as a Disney movie character, what would it be?
That's the one. That's the one that was making me nervous. So you go first.
I'll go first. I'm going to go with Timon from The Lion King.
Great answer.
Because he is a really great friend and really really stands up for his family and close friends. He's really like witty and quick and funny. I like the Hakuna Matata, no worries. Don't worry about controlling things that you can't control. We definitely live by that. And
yeah.
Eats bugs, which if people don't know, into sustainable protein and eat bugs. So Timon.
Excellent answer.
Yeah, I can't beat that answer. So I had two answers. Right off the bat, my mind went to Pinocchio because Pinocchio can't tell a lie. And anyone that has sent us any kind of message, whether it was on Instagram, whether it was on YouTube, I'm very blunt and straightforward with people, and I don't lie to them. If I think they're making a bad decision or if they ask, I'm very blunt, and so I don't tell a lie. But the reason I was like kind of hesitant is that on a different podcast, they did a deep dive on the movie Pinocchio, and it brought up some like underlying themes that I hadn't really thought about. So the second one was Tigger from Winnie the Pooh.
All right.
Just for the simple fact that I'm literally bouncing around everywhere, whether we're outsourcing, whether we're here. Right now we're in the sneaker loft, and I'm always just bouncing around.
That's a good one.
That's amazing, man. You guys are starting out really strong. I didn't expect so much thought to have gone into that. So
good question.
That's the only question we planned for. So
okay.
The rest we're winging it.
All downhill from here. So a lot of my audience actually comes from like the video game resale area. So for those who may not be as familiar with your story, can you tell us a little bit, maybe like the 2 minutes Cliff Notes version of like the RNZY like resale origin story?
Yeah. All right. In less than 120 seconds. So we went full time as resellers before we sold our first pair of shoes. Lindsay was fired from her family business. I was bartending in Portland, Maine, wasn't really happy. And we decided, hey, we've seen people do this. Let's try to do it. Worst case scenario, we go get a job somewhere that we don't like that we can actually pay the bills. So right off the bat, we needed to pay our bills in the first month. We started with the shoes in our closet. We sold them on Facebook Marketplace for $25 a pair. When we realized that people were actually buying used shoes on Facebook, we started going to the thrift. Our buying budget was $20 per week. And then we built our business. We paid all our bills that first month and we were off and running. We graduated into, after we sold 1,200 pairs on Facebook Marketplace, we started looking at other marketplaces. We started selling on eBay. We built our business up to $5,000 or $6,000 a month on eBay, but then didn't really like eBay and realized that there was even other marketplaces we could use. So we started trying out Poshmark, Mercari, 2 or 3 dozen other marketplaces, and then kind of narrowed down the ones that we enjoyed interacting with. We graduated from our living room where we had all the shoes to we tried a storage unit for a while and then realized we didn't need the storage unit, because if we focused more on how do we sell through inventory quicker rather than how do we store more inventory, we didn't need a bigger space. Went back into our apartment, built a 6-figure shoe reselling business out of our apartment. And then about a month ago, we graduated into where we are right now in a sneaker loft, where it's a 13,000 square foot warehouse that we share with 2 other major resellers that share the space with us. So the 13,000 square feet is not all ours. We have the shoe portion of it. We share it with some really great Amazon booksellers and a gentleman who makes salsa and sells it on Amazon. And so present day, since that very first month, we paid all of our bills and then some. We're getting ready to buy our first house with shoe money. Next year, we're going to start our little reseller family. So we're super excited about that. That's part of the reason why we got the warehouse now, is that transition from an apartment to a house and a family. We wanted a separate space for our business so that we can make those transitions. And here we are on the most prestigious YouTube channel we know.
That's right. Headed to 1 million subs really quick.
Yeah, exactly.
That's incredible. You touched on so many excellent topics that I hope to dive in a little bit more to over the course of this time that we have together. Let me ask you this, just as you were talking, have you encountered any resistance from like friends or family members when you tell people that like you're trying to sell used shoes as your full-time income? Like, does that ever get some raised eyebrows, or like, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, definitely at the beginning when we first started, we're really close. My parents live locally, so we see them all the time. And they wanted to be polite, and they're really beautiful people, but they were like, oh my God.
They laugh.
Yeah,
they laugh.
like, we'll see how it goes. Like, they'll be, clocking in at a coffee shop before we know it. And we're supportive, but definitely didn't envision it the way that we did. But I mean, probably 6 months in, after we were like, well, we're still doing it. And at this point we were driving all over Maine. So they thought we were even crazier for doing that. They kind of realized like, oh, okay, this is for real. And now we're like their personal shoe salesmen and women, and just like supply them with all their needs. My mom like pops by and shops here. I'm like,
and Lindsay's dad has dopest shoes. We get him this. He's got good taste in shoes. He's always looking for like the new releases and stuff.
That's amazing. So tell me this, if you could go back in time and start your business all over again, I love your origin story of just like starting from such humble beginnings, kind of out of necessity. If you could go back and do it all over again, is there much that you would do differently? And if so, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a question actually we get a lot, and it's probably one of the most important questions. Obviously, a phrase that we say all the time is we want you to leapfrog our mistakes and get closer to those daily consistent wins. It's how we've learned. We reach out to resellers that are much, much bigger than us and ask them questions all the time. And so the thing that we would share that hindered, although we got off to a great start, I guess our unfair advantage was we didn't give ourselves any other option than to actually win that first month and pay all of our bills. But the thing that we would say is do not compare yourself to other resellers. It's super easy to do that. No matter what niche you're in, there's always someone who has either been doing it longer or is selling more or finds that crazy shoe, or maybe, as you're saying, finds that grail video game.
Yeah.
In every category. And in the beginning, when we were doing well comparative to, we started with nothing and built it, we were starting to see all these people who were like clearing out outlet stores and backing up the U-Haul and filling the, truckloads of shoes, and then they'd have shipping and it would be going crazy. And we were like, we're only selling like 1 pair a day, 2 pairs a day. And at that time, we didn't realize how good that was for us. We went from 0 to 1 pair a day. So if you're watching this, the only thing you should be doing is comparing yourself to yourself. And I know that sounds kind of corny and kumbaya, but like the reason we grew so quickly once we realized that is we said, okay, we did this much last month. Where are there places we can improve so that we do a little bit better this month? And we just kept done that. To this day, we're like, all right, what do we do well in October? Now, how do we improve upon that in November? To the point of today, we knew how well we did this day last month. And so we're trying to improve. How do we improve this day in November versus this day in October? And we've done that we're coming up on 3.5 years, almost 4 years doing this. We just compare ourselves to ourselves.
And I think actually another thing that I kind of wish we did more of is do more like documentation of that first chunk of time. because we're pretty good now about showing what we're doing. But during that, first 6 months, when we were literally from sunrise to sunset on the road delivering these shoes, we didn't really take full advantage of documenting that. So if I could go back, I would do a little bit more of that.
Yeah, the inventory management and like bookkeeping side is definitely a weakness of mine as well that I'm still working on. So that one hits home for me. What are some habits or routines that you have developed over time, and how have they affected your business?
We track everything. Yeah. I think we started with using Google spreadsheets. It's just a free app. It's called Google Sheets on our phone. From the very beginning, we would be like, oh, we got this shoe at the thrift for this much. And when we sold it, this was the difference. And we started keeping track of all that from the very beginning. And I don't really know why we started doing that, but now looking back, I think it was so crucial to us to say, not only how can we improve, but it showed us why we did so well when we did, so that we could replicate those actions or figure out how we could get a little bit better. Now, looking back over the last 3.5 years, to give you actual examples, there's been times where we've only sold used shoes. And then there was another chunk where we only sold brand new shoes. And then there was a chunk where it was about 50-50. And we can look at those chunks in our business and say, are the margins okay? Not only are the margins okay, but can we find consistent inventory just using this type of thing? So even within the shoe category, there's lots of different ways that you can win. And now we've constantly modified that. So tracking absolutely everything. And then of course, come tax time, it makes things super, super easy if you're tracking all that stuff.
And like being aware of ourselves and our like daily routine in general. We like to have these shorter, smaller bursts of productivity versus spending, 18 hours a day on this. We'd rather have, get up early, start at 8, go from like 8 to 2, 8 to noon, and then shut off. That works a little bit better for us, but just like self-awareness with when you're going to be the most productive, and then don't like force it in other ways. Like if you needed, like by 3 o'clock, we're like, whoa, we are lingering. Like this is not a good use of our time right now. We just shut off.
Yeah.
So awareness with, yourself and your work patterns and when to not to overdo it
Yeah, the flip side of that, we just had a great time on a friend of ours, another YouTube channel, Drew Thrift and Flipped. His YouTube channel is Profit Monsters. He has a family and little kids, and so his most productive time is like midnight to 3 a.m., which that wouldn't work for us. That there's no way we'd be able to function. And for him, that's when he's the most productive. So just to give you like a counterpoint, it doesn't have to be exactly how we do it. But if you find your most productive time and you're honest with yourself to what that is, it's going to make the business grow a lot quicker.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And even as I'm kind of introspecting, as you guys are saying that, I'm realizing there are definitely times where like I'm feeling kind of drained, like I've put out my output for the day, but I keep pushing. And those times are always just less productive, like less productive, not only like psychologically, but also for the business. So I love that that's an element that has given you guys so much success. This is one of the questions that I'm most excited to hear from you guys on, because I think it's something that you're very thoughtful about, that a lot of people can really learn from regardless of their niche. And that is how are you reinvesting currently in your business? You mentioned multiple things already, like your warehouse. I know you've put a lot of thought into like scaling and hiring help to, increase various aspects of the business. And how does what you are doing now compare to like what you were doing in the beginning to reinvest?
Yeah, so a couple of things come to mind. We do not make a bet that if we lose that bet, it drastically affects the business. So you just mentioned this warehouse that we have now. It took a lot to convince us why we even needed to get the warehouse, because we have a very successful 6-figure net profit shoe reselling business out of our apartment. Now, the reason that we decided to take the risk of, getting a warehouse was the price made sense. We make more in a single day than it costs to pay for this place for the entire month. And that's not bragging. That's just looking at the
amazing.
our business had grown to the point where so the risk is very low. The overhead is very low if something were to happen in the shoe market. And the second thing is we're also very honest with ourselves and where we're at in our business. So there are other resellers here in Maine. We live in the state of Maine that are doing millions and millions of dollars in shoes that have these big warehouses that have, and we've connected with them and we ask them questions and we're learning and things of that nature. So before we got this warehouse, it was like motivating and you wanted to like jump into having a warehouse and like buying $10,000 in shoes in a single day and like all this stuff. But we talked it out when we were honest with ourselves and we said, although that would be super fun, we're just not ready for that yet. And we always want to make sure we're ready to take that next step, both with everything that good comes from it, but also the new challenges that come from it. And so being honest with yourself and with, do you actually need the thing to reinvest? Like, should you actually be going out and buying more inventory, or should you be taking a real hard look at how you source? Are you doing the research? Are you making sure that the buy cost makes sense based on the market value, all those things, and then making the smartest decision for your business, not the smartest decision for how fun it's going to be. A lot of the times when we see people sourcing or they reach out to us, they'll say, oh, I found this really amazing pair of shoes that's super profitable. How much should I sell it for? And we say, how do you not know that already? If you're telling us it's super profitable, if you don't know about this thing, your system is broken. And so your question is about reinvesting in your business.
Yeah,
it's time to focus on all parts of the business when you're reinvesting. And maybe that means taking a step back and saying, how can I make sure that I'm profitable with the decisions that I'm making, rather than reinvesting and spending more money and just spending more money. It's about allocating the time so that you're actually profitable and being efficient in your system.
And to be more specific about like the money reinvesting, because we did go full time day one and needed to actually pay our bills that first month, we had to know exactly how much we needed to make for that month. So we reinvested every dollar over what we needed. And so at the beginning, like Ryan said, that was like $20 a week, because like a majority of the money coming in, we needed to put towards bills. We pretty much still do the exact same thing. We live a pretty modest lifestyle. We don't go crazy and spend a lot of money on really anything. But we know exactly how much we need to spend on our bills every single month. We've added now a chunk that we want to put into savings every month in order to fund our real estate. And then everything above that, we're reinvesting. So we know on, a weekly basis how much money we have to spend on inventory. And for the last 3.5 years, we've just had a buying budget, and it's changed. And some weeks it's more, some weeks it's less, some weeks it's none. It's rarely none now, but we important to know that exact number. So you're not spending $1,000 on inventory if the reality is, you only have 100 to spend. Then you're on a slippery slope to negative.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic advice. You mentioned very briefly there putting some of that back into real estate, which is another alternative. Like, you have the business that you're reinvesting in, and then you have this sort of separate entity that you are using to make you money over time. Would you guys talk a little bit? I know that that's not something you talk about a whole lot on your channel, but I think it's sort of a macro level, like financial principle that a lot of resellers could benefit from. So could you talk a little bit about your thought process in putting some of your profits into this other kind of investment?
Yeah, I think what it boils down to is what are your goals? I mean, we're very clear with each other, and sometimes they change. And we got real excited about the idea of purchasing land, not only around the United States, but all around the world, and kind of building up this idea that we could do some traveling to our land all over the world. And then our family could travel to there and, would obviously build houses on it or some kind of living structures. And as we travel, there'd be a home away from home all over the place. Now, for us, not knowing a lot about that, it's a very, very hefty goal. And so we set out to first of all, we agreed upon that. I think that's one important fact is we talk it out and we both agree that that's something that we want to do, rather than, me telling Lindsay like that, this is what we're going to do, and her just kind of going along with it, but not being as pumped. And so being honest with what your goal is, whether it's I want to pay my cell phone bill this month, or I want to buy a piece of land in Europe, you know, or anywhere in between that. And then kind of reverse engineering what it's going to take to actually get there. And I accentuate actually. We're not just saying like put $5 in a jar, you know, every week and you'll be able to buy land in Europe. We're saying, no, we're going to need a significant amount of money. And I'm just using that example. We actually have not talked about buying land in Europe, but we know it's going to take a significant amount of money. And so because we have that long-term goal, whenever these things come into our world, these short-term wants, whether it's a super expensive dinner or, you know, an expensive pair of shoes or expensive piece of clothing, we say, is that going to drastically affect our long-term goals? And most of the time it does. So we don't do it. Now, sometimes we do, we're human, but because we have that strict, we're excited about this long-term goal. Not only are we paying our bills, but now fast forward 3.5 years into our reselling adventure, I'm happy to say we have a significant amount of money in savings, like more than both of us have ever had in our entire lives. And we've both had, you know, corporate jobs. We both had like we have a significant amount of money, and that does a couple of things. It gives you more freedom to kind of try stuff and work in your business, but it also gives you that motivation. Holy smokes, we're getting towards our big long-term goal. This isn't $5. And it's okay if it's $5 in the jar in the beginning, because that's how it was. But we're taking significant money every week and putting it into savings, which gives us even more fuel to go into these short-term goals every single day, you know, to fill this warehouse, but then empty this warehouse, get all the shoes sold and go out and get more, so that we're getting close to that goal. And I think without that kind of bigger, long-term kind of meaty goal, it's a lot easier to say, you know what, I'm just going to take today off. You know what, I'm just going to take today off. You know what, I'm not really going to list the 100 things that I got. I can do it next week. And then all of a sudden you got a storage unit full of stuff that you haven't listed. And if you don't have that long-term hefty goal that you can chip away at every single day, it's harder to stay motivated.
Let me ask you guys this. We operate in an industry where there is a decent amount of turnaround, I would say. There are a lot of people coming into the market, whether it's because of, you know, getting inspired by other people that they know or on social media or YouTube or whatever. And then a lot of folks will quickly burn out and realize that, you know, it's not necessarily what they expected, or maybe it's not for them. What do you think that you guys are doing right that most people get wrong?
I mean, we're just very honest. I mean, we're not like lying. We like this. Like we really wake up every single day enjoying this. One, because it allows us to wake up every day and decide what the heck we want to do. And if we don't want to work one day, we don't work. If we want to go to the Cape for a long weekend, if COVID wasn't going on, we could go do that. It gives us the time freedom, which was why we did this in the first place. And then we spent the time to find the product that we enjoyed selling the most. We didn't enjoy selling the blenders that we were selling at first, or the clothing that we tried. We really enjoyed shoes. So we focused on shoes because it made every aspect of the reselling process really enjoyable for us.
And to compound on that, here, based on your question, here's what most people do. They'll see us and be like, oh my gosh, I can make so much money reselling shoes. And then they go to the thrift and they're like, yeah, I'm never going to clean a pair of used shoes ever. And then they're like, all right, I'll just do new shoes. And they go and they don't really realize the market, and they start buying shoes that they like. And then they realize they're not profitable. And then they hit a stumbling block. And then they'll say, well, I saw someone sell a VCR that they got at Goodwill. So they go to Goodwill and they start buying VCRs without, you know what I mean? And they're just like chasing the next thing without saying, what do I enjoy interacting with? And as Lindsay said, we thoroughly love going out and sourcing shoes, and we've cleaned over 10,000 pairs of shoes ourselves. And we like talking about shoes. And again, as Lindsay said, we did not like sourcing clothes. And we tried the electronics and we tried all these, and we just didn't like it. The money was great. The margins were great. And it's why there's people winning in electronics. There's why there's people winning with video games and consoles, but it's because they like it. They can talk about it. They like learning about it. It's the same reason why some people win with shoes and some don't. It's possible for everyone. But then when it comes down to building systems and being repeatable in those systems, then it comes down to what everyone talks about and your passion and really loving it. And I think the reality is most people don't like shoes as much as that. So they just got to figure out either another category, or maybe they don't even like reselling because it's 100% on you. There's no one to blame if you don't win. And so there's just a few things that we're definitely not better than anyone else, but we notice trends, especially since we only do shoes. There's questions that we ask. We're like, well, are you going to enjoy sourcing shoes every week? And they're like, well, no, but I see the money's great. And you're like, oh, shoes aren't for you. Then you should try something that you like wake up and like, I want to go find video games, or I want to go find VCRs or whatever it is.
Yeah. So on that topic specifically, you guys are a great example of the productivity that can result from depth in a niche. On the flip side of that equation, there are a lot of folks out there, both on YouTube and in their businesses, who are more about breadth. You know, there's like I think a argument to be made for like the more niches that you can understand, the fewer times you'll have to come out of like a yard sale or a thrift store empty-handed. It's sort of another tool in your belt. So would you guys, to the average reseller who's getting into it, recommend more of like depth, more the way that like you guys have gone? Or is there something to be said on the other side of that coin as well?
There is something to be said for starting with width. That's exactly what we did. We didn't have money to spend on any inventory. So we went around our house and sold anything and everything that we didn't use. And it was only through doing that we sold our first pair of shoes and realized quickly that, oh, we would rather go depth in this one niche than width. But starting with everything is the only way you're going to find the thing that you like the most, I think. You two are both, no, you're nailing it. As a new reseller, it's the best thing to do because you don't know. It doesn't make sense to go deep in just one category when you're first starting out. I think what happens though is as you go width, you realize how fun it is to like search all these different things, and you don't build the systems and the depth to build a very consistent, profitable business. And the reason I say that is because we have friends that are resellers that are just like all day, every day, you know, outsourcing absolutely everything. While in the meantime, again, we're not better than anyone else, but in the meantime, we're walking the dog and going out to dinner and going on, you know, vacation and all this because we've built depth in the thing that we enjoy now, rather than, I mean, we could go and do a thrift and search all the categories and it'd be fun to kind of whatever, but then the rest of it, which is listing and research and, you know, all cleaning and photography, we only really like doing that with shoes. So the business is a lot harder to build. And the big word is consistent. Almost anyone on the planet can go to a garage sale and find this grail thing for $5 that you can flip for 100 or 500. Anyone can do that. But to build a business that consistently pays all of your bills and then some, that's a lot harder to do it that way. But as we said, to wrap up this part of it, it's super important to do all the things at first. Absolutely all of them. Because you may not know how fun it is to look for VCRs and test them and all those things until you try it. You also may not realize how much you despise like thrifting clothes and photographing them until you do it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I've definitely experienced myself to be true, that like originally I think it was very helpful to like go wider and understand more things, sort of get my feet wet in a lot of areas. But the scale has really come after I decided, okay, I think there's enough opportunity, even just in my area, to focus on video games, because now like I've got plenty of people in my area who I've built connections with that know I like to buy and sell video games, that like now I'm the one that they call because they know that's kind of my thing. Love it. And that doesn't come nearly as much when you're looking for anything and everything. Very true.
When your business is slow and you're having a tough week, maybe you like go to a few thrift stores in a day and you come out with a lot less than you expected, or you know, maybe there's like a summer slowdown. I don't know if you guys really experience that as much. What keeps you motivated when things are tough? Well, we don't have slow times, to be honest. And the reason that we don't is because a couple things we've already talked about. In the very beginning, there was slow times because we didn't realize our actions dictate our results 100% of the time.
let's use your example. We thought that, oh, if we go to this thrift and it's already been picked through, bummer, we got to wait until they kind of restock. Now fast forward, and we heard about summer slowdown in the very beginning from other resellers. We heard about, Q4 is going to be crazy, and then January it kind of slows down and there's a bunch of returns and like all this stuff. And that just has not been our experience, because on a daily basis, as we mentioned in the beginning, we're looking at, all right, what's our goal today? This day last month we did this much. How can we do a little bit better? This week, in last month we did this much. How can we do a little bit better? And so when you talk slowdown, we think like the bottom of a dip. If it starts to dip at all, we jump on it and we start acting in a certain way. Now, to talk about sourcing, instead of us saying, all right, we're going to go to this thrift this week, we say we're going to go to these 50 thrifts this week. And it's literally almost impossible to not pull the amount of inventory that we need from 50 thrifts. So instead, what's happening is we don't have any more space in the car to put inventory. Let's just go home right now. Do you see the difference in our mentality? Our mentality now is to build consistent sourcing routes so that we have enough opportunity to say no to a bunch of stuff while saying yes to the best stuff, and having to say, we got to go home, we don't have any more room. Now, the other side of that is maybe you don't have the time, maybe you don't have the car, maybe you don't have, all that stuff to do that. But then again, there's no excuse. We've done several videos on how you can sit on your couch and source inventory from the marketplaces that you use and flip them back. It gets dropped off at your house. You get it shipped to you. You don't have to go anywhere. So we're no excuses mentality. And the idea of like slowdowns, the idea of, we don't even think about Q4 being better than the whatever, because there's people that lose in Q4. That's the reality. Yeah. But there's people that win in Q4. There's people that win. Let's talk about shoes. Every single day, everywhere, people are buying shoes. So they're either buying from you or they're buying from someone else. And it's been our goal to lift everyone else up around us, to let them know, like, hey, the shoe category is not going anywhere. There's enough room for all of us. And to never make excuses by, oh, the thrift didn't have, or the thrift prices went up, or the outlet, some of the outlets don't let bulk buyers buy, so we just go to the next place. Like, there's a solution for every problem out there. There's no such thing as a slowdown. There's different ways to win, which may be different than when it was easy. You see what I'm saying? So a slowdown, you might have to pivot and make some changes.
What would you say has been your biggest resale related failure?
Biggest failure.
It's a good sign it's taking you a while to think of it.
Well, the first thing that jumped to my mind, what I wouldn't consider, is comparing ourselves. We were comparing ourselves, which slowed us way down, but we've already talked about that. So I'm trying to provide additional value. The idea of, when I think of failure, I think of this, we tried this thing, it didn't work, and we lost money. And we just don't do that, because we are very, very particular. Every single shoe that we buy has multiple game plans to make a profit. There's it's going to sell this quick on this marketplace, and if it doesn't, it's going to sell for this much on this marketplace, or worst case scenario, it's going to sell on this marketplace, and all those rungs is for profit. And if we don't have a game plan like that, we don't buy the pair to flip it. And so I think when I think about, we're talking about shoes, shoe failure, you get hyped about the shoe, you buy it, and you think you're just going to be able to make a ton of money on it. You spend $170 or $220 on a new release, or maybe you buy the pair in the thrift that's $40, but it's a pair that you love, and then you realize the market dictates it, just telling you that it's not profitable. That's what we consider a failure, meaning you have to like sell it for a loss and try to get as much money back as you can. But even then, that's not really a failure, because you can learn. You just hopefully don't make that same mistake again. So
we did have a failure.
Oh, yo, we got one.
Here we go. Buckle in.
Failure on our part of being incredibly trusting people. We're very honest. We're very trusting. That's kind of our fallback, is to be that way. And in the beginning, it was like our first summer reselling, and we brought on a college kid to sell some of our shoes for us. And long story short, after sitting down a couple of times with him, we trusted him. wrongfully, because then he just stole all our shoes. So we did, again, it was
not all the shoes.
It was a calculated risk. We only gave him, 60 pairs or something. Like it wasn't, taking the shirt off our backs, but it was definitely a bummer, but a huge learning experience. We still are very trusting people, but we definitely have a few more hurdles that people have to jump through before we let them into our world like that. But that was definitely a mishap at the beginning.
Yeah.
So.
Problems being married to Pinocchio, right?
Right.
Very true. She puts up with a lot, for sure.
So there are a lot of folks on social and in the comments section that would probably say that what you guys are doing can't be done in their area or their situation, right? My thrift stores are bad, don't have yard sales, whatever. Would you say that what you are doing can be done by most people? And what message would you have for the folks who are saying that?
Mm-hmm.
It's bull snail. It's completely false. We know people in every single state. It's funny. We'll get a DM that says, because you live in a big city, that's why you're so successful. And then the next DM will say, because you live in the middle of nowhere, that's why you're so successful. Both of those things cannot be true.
Yep.
You live in a small town in Maine, outside of the bigger town, Portland, Maine, but Portland is still 60,000 people. Like it's not like a metropolis.
Yeah.
The reality that you can do OA, online arbitrage, and have the shoes sent to you no matter where you live. You can do RA anywhere. There's always thrifts. You could do quote unquote, like a bottle drive. You can do a shoe drive. Hey, you're going to donate your shoes. I'll come around and pick them up for you. There's literally no excuse. We know resellers that have 8 kids that are crushing it. We know we don't have kids yet. We know single team, like one person resellers that do way more in sales than us. And then we've met teams of like 30 and 40 that go up and down the East Coast sourcing together that absolutely crush it. So there's everything in between. Whatever excuse people have in the shoe niche, people tell us all the time, oh, this shoe's saturated in this market. It's like, no, it's not. You just are putting up a crappy listing and you're not doing the research, or you're only using one marketplace, or, there's literally a solution for everything. And we've been tested on this. We answer, a couple hundred DMs every single day on Instagram, lots of questions, lots of how do I do this? It's how we base all of our content. So if you're watching this, and I'm sure this is true, but we only talk about what we know, and what we know is shoes. I'm sure this is very true in almost every category. There's someone who's absolutely crushing in that category that has way less than you do. I mean, we don't even own a computer. We built a 6-figure shoe reselling business on our iPhone 7s. We don't even have the new iPhones. We have the iPhone 7
in an apartment.
In our apartment. Yeah. Only recently have we upgraded to the Sneaker Loft warehouse, but I couldn't be more bullish on the idea that there's no excuse.
Yeah.
There's no ailment of the body. There's no, if you are connected to the internet, and even not, if you can go to the local library and connect to the internet, you can build a massive business.
Yeah, the only dictating variable is definitely yourself, and whether you're willing to do what you have to do to be able to resell.
Your situation might be different than ours, but you can still absolutely crush it.
Yeah. One of the things I have to say that's been most magnetic to me about your channel, your social media presence, is just your like get after it mindset, like no excuses, like there is opportunity for everyone. That's something that really I feed on, that gives me energy. But let me ask you this. You talked about how there are so many different ways of going about your specific like shoe niche. There, a million different resellers doing different things. What would you say is your competitive edge for the way that you're doing things?
Well, we're willing to do it consistently, 7 days a week, all the time. Well, I also think that we are more honest with ourselves than some people are honest with themselves. Let's use an example we already used. People will say, yo, this shoe is dope. I'll be able to make $100 on the shoe. All right. sell it then. And then they've got this sense of pride rather than saying, you know what, I messed up. The market isn't dictating, and I can't make $100 on this shoe, blah, blah. I didn't actually do the research. I just was hyped about it. Or I didn't find it at low enough buy cost. Yeah, it's selling for 200, but I bought it for 190. Like, you need to buy that shoe under $100 to really make an impact, to make it worth it. And we're very honest with ourselves. And to be very honest, myself, Lindsay is better at this than I am. And thank God I've connected myself with someone who is, hey, you know what? That shoe is not coming home with us from the thrift. And I'm like, yeah, but we can clean it this way and we can restore it this way. And she's like, we can, but that it takes too much time for that in our current game plan. If that was the only shoe we were bringing home this week, yeah, that would be a yes. But we've got 300 pairs we're bringing home. We can't do that 300 times this week. And I'm like, man, you're right. And I think my burden, as I see the potential write-off, I'm that person who's like, yo, we can make $100 on this shoe. And she's like, all right, let's talk about how we're going to make $100. And then I'm like, you know what? That's going to take way more labor. It's going to take way more resources, whether it's the full strip and the paint and the blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do that 300 times this week. And then we meet in the middle. Most of the time we meet on her side, but it's the reality of being honest with yourself. And you asked like, what's the difference between us and someone else? And we just do that all the time. We're like, yeah, we have all this space. That doesn't mean that we just want to buy 5,000 pairs of shoes. We want to bring in a shoe that's going to sell really quick and 6-7x our money. How do we do that? And sometimes we find, like Lindsay said, we find more inventory in a week than we can even handle. And sometimes it's a little bit harder, but we always build routes so that it gives us the best opportunity to be consistent in that.
Fantastic. What financial habits do you have that are setting you up for long-term success?
We are very in tune with it. Like on a day-to-day basis, we are, transferring money to this account, paying this credit card off every single day. We're moving money around. So we always know exactly where we are financially. We know how much we have invested in our inventory. We know how much each individual pair has cost us. We know how much they've sold for, our profit margin. All of those little details we're aware of. So it makes it a lot easier to not fall down any slippery slopes in the financial category because we're checking it on a daily basis. We also aren't big spenders in general. So 98% of our money goes towards either like the roof over our head and the roof over our shoes and the shoes themselves, which allows us to do more with less as far as with the inventory because we're not putting money into, our personal items, clothes and stuff.
Our business and our life is very lean because we have monster big goals. I mean, we're going to be buying a house very soon. We're going to be starting a family very soon. And so not only are we conscious of that because it's something we've never done, things are going to change. And if nothing else, no one watching this right now can say that they were prepared for a pandemic to happen. Mm-hmm. And especially how the United States has kind of handled that pandemic. And again, we're not going to get into which side or which way you're going, but no matter who you are, it's affected all of us. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't know that a pandemic was going to happen, but we did know that there was going to be very challenging times ahead. So right off the bat, in the very beginning, we started saying, okay, emergency fund or whatever you want to call it, emergency fund, like maybe something happens to the car that we have, or maybe something happens to one of our health, or of course we couldn't predict, like, holy smokes, a pandemic happened. And our business was healthy the whole way through because we weren't forced into making these like risky decisions or decisions that we wouldn't normally make because we were prepared for that. And I think that there's something to be said. Obviously, we didn't make that up, like emergency fund, rainy day fund, whatever that is. It goes a long way when you actually have to use it. And as Lindsay said, we're so financially aware of where we are. We don't pretend to be bigger than we are. We celebrate where we are, exactly where we are, and then we set the goal a little bit higher while always putting a little tiny chunk away for the unpredictable situations.
What would you say, what book or podcast or YouTube channel has most shaped how you view and operate in your business?
You got a good one?
Well, I consume probably the most reseller related type things, mostly because while I'm photographing shoes, I have a TV above the photography station, and I got, Joe Rogan's podcast going. I got a daily refinement, watch a lot of daily refinement stuff.
Yeah.
We watch your stuff as well. Love
Aww.
the energy that you put out there. I mean, there's a lot to be said. You can learn a lot from obviously people in other categories, but people that are determined to do what they're doing, there's a lot that you can pull out of that. It doesn't have to be necessarily shoe related or video game related or console or all these things. But if someone's determined and they're showing you what they're doing, that's, as Lindsay described earlier, like documenting, there's a lot in that, because you can leapfrog some of the mistakes. You can take a little piece, maybe not all of what they're doing, and you can really, grow your business and apply and try things and see what works and what doesn't. So just to name a few, your channel, Daily Refinements channel, Joe Rogan's podcast, just because he has he has the most interesting people in the world on, and he has an actual 2-3 hour conversation with them where he's not trying to pick a side. He's just trying to talk about crazy important stuff. And so those are just off the top of my head. And we have a whole bookshelf, a whole mini little library of books that we've accumulated over there. I can't think of one specific off the top. Gary V, obviously, he's someone that I watch a lot of his stuff because he's all over the place and very honest with his stuff. So there's just a few specifics.
Yeah, I think one huge advantage that new resellers have is we operate in an industry where there's just such an abundance of good material, good creators out there who are putting out honest messages about where they are, what they're doing, best practices. So that's just something that I always like to get feedback from people on.
Wait, I got one more.
Oh yeah, give it to me.
It's a show that Lindsay absolutely loves. The baking one. The English one.
The British Bake Off.
Was that what it's called?
Why?
I'm gonna explain. What is it called?
Yeah. The Great British Bake Off.
It's called The Great British Bake Off. And so I stumble upon this when she's watching it. But the premise of the show is there's like a dozen bakers. They're all competing against each other. There's a timed competition. There's lots of shows like this. But this one's great because they're competing against each other, but they're also kind of helping each other out. And every once in a while you'll see one person's pie blows up, and all of them will come over and start helping. And that's very relatable to the reseller world. We don't believe that we're competing against other shoe resellers, although that we understand that that's a perspective.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we're all helping each other out. And every once in a while, one of us will stumble and be like, oh my gosh, I sourced a pair of shoes that was all ripped up, or I don't know. And we'll try to help each other out. Not everyone, but some of us will try to help each other out. And so the Great British Bake Off? That's another one. Watch that show.
I did not see that one coming. But that's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
So last one that I want to end with for you guys is, how big of a role does mentality play in success in resale in general, and how has your mindset shaped your career?
Huge. For us, it's everything. In a basic day-to-day just life as people, to have a positive outlook. And I'm blessed to have a husband who is the extreme. So it brings that side
positive
of me. I'm a little bit more of a realist, a realist. And he's very, very optimistic. So he brings that side out of me. But having that positive, you can't control other people, just focus on what you control. Don't worry about all that other shit going on. Every single day is just it helps. And so obviously that's going to translate into whatever you're doing.
Yeah, there's people that and we never talk poorly about anyone else, but we're talking about mindset. There's people that source at the same exact places that we source that have a different mindset than us, that are self-proclaimed struggling with their reselling business. And so if you take all the variables and you line them up, we're sourcing at the same place. We're using the same marketplaces.
Yeah.
The only difference is that mindset. And the different mindset is, oh, there's never anything good here. The prices are too high. I never find anything good. Versus us, we're like, oh, how do we make this work? How do we find a marketplace where if we buy it at this price, it will be profitable? How do we improve our listings based on this is the inventory that we're bringing in? How do we solutions versus deprecation, or if hopefully that's the right word, is everything. So mindset is everything, because you definitely can find people who will say, oh, that reseller is affecting my business because they're selling it for lower than I am. Where we are telling people, sell it for whatever you want. This is where we got it, and this is where we're selling it. Game on. We'll give you a high five. If you sell it for less than us, that's okay. If you sell it for more than us, that's okay. Mindset's everything.
That's so true. I actually, similarly to that experience, I just got a comment on one of my videos that was talking about a neighboring city to me, Louisville. Someone lived there. They said, yeah, man, the pawn shops there, they all know what they have. They're all super overpriced, no opportunity at all. But little did they know that in a couple of weeks, I have a video coming out about a sourcing trip that I took to Louisville and ended up coming away with over $1,000 in profit. So you're right. Mindset is completely everything, even when everything else is, completely equal. But yeah, I just want to finish by commending you guys, because we've talked a lot in this short time we've had together of a lot of macro level concepts, but you guys do a fantastic job. I think much better than most on your channel about really getting into the weeds, into the micro, about just equipping and teaching other people who want to learn the shoe niche how to do it, like the nitty gritty, exactly what you guys are doing every day, whether it comes to like sourcing or cleaning or shipping. And I just think there's a lot of value in that. And you've provided a ton of value as well in this interview. So thank you guys so much for being on.
Hey, we appreciate you having us, man.
It was fun.
We always love connecting with you, and we appreciate it.
Wow, that was an incredible interview. I hope you guys got as much value out of that as I did personally. The thing that I would love to hear from you guys today is I'm still very much working out the script for these interviews. What I want to know is, one, what's one question that I've been asking that you really like, that you want to make sure that I continue asking people in the future? And what's maybe one question that I haven't been asking that you would like to hear from various resellers answered? So if you haven't already, get on over to RNZY, subscribe to their channel. They bring a ton of value. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys on the flip.